Hey guys, so some of you had asked me to make a video of how to apply your jams. So I'm going to show you how to remove your jam berries, how to apply them, and then go over some troubleshooting tips as well. Well, I'm just going to point this down so you can actually see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm wearing Diamond Dust Sparkle and the Style Box from August, which is the purple chevron, which you cannot get anymore because it was from the Style Box, which is an exclusive wrap. I'm going to be putting on the August Hostess exclusive. So if you had a party in August, you may have had a chance to get these. Otherwise, unfortunately, you're out of luck because they're beautiful. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is take mine off. I'm just going to take this pointer finger one off first. There's a couple ways you can do it. I use nail polish remover. You can also use isopropyl alcohol or rubbing alcohol, and you can use oil as well, whether it be coconut oil or vegetable oil or olive oil. If you do use the oil, you may want to wash your hands really well and then do your new wraps the next day, so that way the oil doesn't interfere with your new wrap application. This is my nail polish remover. So what I do is, if you hadn't had your wraps on for very long, you may want to heat them first just to make them pliable. I have had mine on for about 9 days, and they're ready to come off because my growth is coming out here, so I like to change mine. They do stay on for 14 days for me, but I just can't stand to see the nail starting to stick out, so that's why I'm taking mine off. And I have too many designs to go through, and I don't have enough time. So all I have to do is just lift up the edge a little bit, and then you can use your wooden cuticle pusher and kind of soak that in there, and then just get underneath of the wrap. And as you'll see, it just literally starts to come right off, and it'll start to peel right up. The other option that you can try is using a dental floss sword. And the same thing, you would just get it wet, dip it in your oil or your alcohol or your nail polish remover, and then just literally saw back and forth. And that'll help pull it right up. Now it's important to use these methods in order to get your wraps up and not just pull them off. It is strong adhesive, so if you were just to rip your wraps off, then you may take some of your top layer of nail off with it, and that could of course damage your nails. And then after you're done, you might just have to use a little bit of rubbing alcohol or nail polish remover to get rid of the extra adhesive. Okay. So after that, we're going to apply them now. So what I do first is measure and cut my wraps. I already know which ones I use. If you haven't seen a full sheet, this is what a full sheet looks like. There's 18 stickers on it. These first two I use for pedicure, so I use this one for my big toe, and then I cut this one in half, and then cut each half into 4s and use those for the rest of my 4 toes on each foot. So these two for a pedicure, and then I have the rest of these ones to pick from, the 7 of them for my manicure. So I always have 2 accent wraps left over, and that's how we get the 2 manicures, 2 pedicures, plus accent wraps out of each sheet. So I already know which ones go for which fingers, so I'll cut out the one that I always use for my pointer finger. I like to cut them out individually just because it makes it easier to work with. And I'll show you how to measure them. Okay, so we'll set that aside. So now I'm just using this one because I know that this is my correct size. But if I were to measure them, what I would do is just lay the sheet over my nails like this, and then I would find which one is the closest fitting without touching my cuticles. So basically, you want to still be able to see a tiny sliver of nail on each side of the wrap. This way you know that the wrap will not touch your cuticle. If you look at your nail, it's typically more narrow down at the base of your cuticle and wider on the sides. So if you were to pick a wrap that completely covered from side to side up here, then it would cover down over top of your cuticle, and you don't want that. So find the one that has a little bit of sliver on each side, and just remember that this rounded part goes towards the round part of your cuticle, just like that. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to cut it in half, so I have one for each finger. Now to prep your nails, if you feel like your nails are long and you want to cut them, wait to cut them until after you apply your wrap, so that way your nails aren't too short. So now that I have my wraps cut, typically I'll go through and cut out each finger so that way they're all prepped and ready to go. And then I will go and wash my hands really well. Use dish detergent so that way you get rid of all the oil around your nail bed. That's typically one of the biggest problems people have is oily nails, and that causes the adhesion to lift. I mean, just think about if you were to try to put a nail on a greasy potato chip, the wrap wouldn't stick because of all the oil. So you want to get rid of all the oil as much as possible. So wash your hands really well. The blue dish detergent works the best supposedly. And after that, I'm going to come back and push my cuticles back. So just pretend that I washed my hands. You can use your wooden cuticle pusher. Just remember that these are one-time use only because they can harbor bacteria. And then you can push it back. You can also, if you have a rubber cuticle pusher, these come in your application kit. And these are awesome, especially for later when we actually apply pressure to the wrap. Just remember that the wraps stick with heat and pressure. That's the biggest thing, is they're heat and pressure activated. So you're going to push back your cuticle, and if you don't really understand what your cuticle is, it's just that layer of skin that lies on top of the edge of your nail. And it's kind of transparent and it's very flexible, so you'll be able to push it back. Okay, after that, I am going to take some alcohol. You can get these alcohol prep pads at any drugstore, grocery store, big value store, whatever. Or you can just use a big container of rubbing alcohol with like a cotton ball. This is going to help dry out. But you know what I actually wanted to do? Before you use your alcohol, after you push back your cuticle, you're going to want to buff your nails, especially if you have ridges. If you look at your nails and they look like they have bumps in them, kind of going vertically, then you probably want to buff them just because it'll provide a smoother surface. This buffer also comes in the application kit. So it'll help smooth out the surface. I think same thing, thinking back to a potato chip, the ones that have ridges on them, if you try to put a wrap on it, it wouldn't stick well because it doesn't have a good surface area. You're only getting the surface area of the part that the ridges are at their highest points. So this kind of helps smooth it out. So I'm going to just put my alcohol back on there again really well. We'll just let that air dry. So now to get your wrap off, you can either use tweezers. I just use the opposite end of the cuticle pusher. Now, as soon as anything touches the wrap, it's going to lose the adhesive portion of that wrap. So I'm only getting the very edge here. This is why I don't trim my wraps until I put them on. But you can use the tweezers, like I said, and just pull my wrap off just like that. I'm going to use my heater. You can use a hair dryer or any other heat source. This is a Jamberry heater, which is awesome because I can do everything hands-free. This is actually one of the older heaters. They have new heaters now, which are a lot smaller and cuter. It's about to fall off the table. Okay, so I turn it on. And these are awesome too because they don't get hot. Like I can sit here and touch it, and I can not worry about it getting too hot to the point where it's going to burn me, or if my baby came over, it's not going to burn her either. But it does get hot enough to where it actually will heat my wrap. So I'm going to show you. Now you can see how the wrap is getting flexible. So you just have to heat it up there for a few seconds and see how it gets all flexible. And that's how we know that the wrap is getting warm. The sparkle wraps, like this silver one that I just took off, are a lot thicker than these standard wraps, so they take a lot longer time to heat. So just heat that up. Okay, that's more than enough time. Then what I'm going to do, I'll just turn this off right now, is apply it directly to my nail. I kind of pull my cuticle back a little bit and then line my nail up with the wrap and lightly push down. And then what I do is I take one edge and I kind of pull up and over, and then I take my other edge and pull up and over. And at the same time, I'm just kind of putting a lot of pressure back and forth and making sure that it's not touching my cuticle. I almost try to get it the wrap so that it kind of sits underneath of my cuticle. So I kind of pull the cuticle back and then push, and I just kind of keep pulling the cuticle back just to make sure it's not touching anywhere. And then I can take my rubber cuticle pusher and apply lots and lots and lots of pressure all the way around. You want to apply the most pressure, especially around the edges, and then up at the top. Now, if you are doing these on kids and you don't want to use a heat source like a blow dryer or the mini heater, or if you're doing this for the first time and you're afraid that you're going to mess up, because as soon as you touch the wrap to your nail, if you try to lift up, it's going to be less sticky because it's going to be pulling up some of your cells with it. You can do a cold application where I just take the wrap directly off like this, and then I put it directly on my nail without heating it first, and then I put my heat source on after. So that way it gives me a little wiggle room to be able to pick it up a little bit and put it back on. But just remember that that's still going to lose adhesion every time you lift the wrap up. And then what you can do is, if you want to use a rice bag method, you can take a little fabric pouch. This is just a cotton square pouch, just like a bean bag that's filled with rice, the long cooked rice, not the instant rice, and heat that up in the microwave for a few seconds until it's hot. And then you can hold that over your nail as a heat source. You might want to use this instead of the blow dryer, or these are great for if you're on the run, if you're at work, you don't have a heat source, you can use those. So next thing I'm going to do is just trim some of this excess off, just as close as I can. And these curved nail scissors are also in the application kit that you can buy on the website. So you don't want any of the wrap to be hanging over at all, because this gives a chance for it to snag. And if, like, let's say tomorrow I wake up and I feel like I'm snagging my nails on things, and that means that my edge of my nail isn't smooth and that there's probably some wrap still hanging over. This, you want to get that fixed right away, because if I let that snag on stuff, then it could help lift the wrap, which we don't want that to do. So I trimmed it really well. If you're having trouble trimming, you can also take some nail clippers. And this is why, if you want to trim your nails, you want to wait until like this point in time. And so that way you're trimming both the nail and the wrap together. So I'll just do that just because. Especially for the sparkle wraps, this is a good way to get a good trim. And then I use the baggie method. So what I do is I just take a plastic sandwich bag and I put my finger in the corner of the bag just like this. And then I'm going to point this directly towards my heat source and kind of push at the same time. So what this does is it creates like a heat pocket inside of the bag very, very quickly. It gets hot very quickly, so be careful. But at the same time, I'm applying pressure by pushing through the corner. So I'm just going to go like this until it gets hot. Okay, that's really hot. Whew, hot. Okay, and so then after, I just go back and push really well again. And that's it. And if I was using the baggy method, then I would just warm it up. I could put my finger in the bag again if I wanted with the rice bag, and then heat the rice bag and apply heat and pressure like this. So those are a couple options for application. So now it's completely applied. If you look at the side of my nail, you'll still see a sliver, which is what we want. So that way we know that we have a good fitting. There's no puckering at all. If you see puckering around the edge, then there's a good chance that the wrap is too big. Also, if there's a crease at the top here, then that's also an indication that the wrap is too big. If you feel like you have a good fitting and you still have a little bit like a bubbles on the side, all you have to do is apply some heat and pressure, and you'll be able to work those bubbles out. But you want to get them down as soon as possible. So some troubleshooting. Typically for people who have early lifting prematurely, it's either because the size is incorrect. If you think about if you had the wrap was too big and it was laying on top of your cuticle here, as your nail grew out, then the cuticle would stay there, but the wrap would lift off the cuticle and grow with the nail. So then you would have a lifted edge, and that would allow for dirt and oil to get underneath of it and for it to snag onto things, and then your wrap could come off prematurely. Also, as I said, of course, look for the fitting to be proper. If you are really OCD about the fitting, or you wanted to, let's say your fingers fit in the Jam Junior wraps and you wanted to use the adult wraps, what you can do is the tape method, which is where you just take a piece of tape, and let's just pretend that I already took my other wraps off, and I would put the tape over my finger like this, and then I would just use the pen to draw the outside line of where my cuticle is, and then I could take that piece of tape and put it on the back of one of my wraps, and then cut the tape and the wrap out at the same time. So let's say I wanted to use this wrap for that finger, then I would just cut on the inside of that pen mark, and that way I would have a perfect fit to my nail. So these are great if you just can't stand to have a sliver of nail showing, which I've never had anyone be like, oh my goodness, I can see a tiny bit of your nail. Or if you have smaller fingernails and you want to use a larger wrap, then you can use the tape method. Also, if you seem to still have lifting and you have a lot of ridges in your nails and the buffing just doesn't seem to be doing enough, you can get a base filler. So Janeberry sells a smoothing base coat where that'll help kind of fill in the ridges and create a smooth surface. Also for the oily nails, you can try to do a hydrogen peroxide soak. So after you have cleaned your nails, you've done the soap, hand washing, you can dip your fingers in hydrogen peroxide for a few seconds, and then let them air dry, but just kind of help brush some of the oil off in the hydrogen peroxide, and that way you may not get some rebound oil production from alcohol use. I think that's about it. If you have any questions, you can always email me or text me. But I hope this helps you guys compared to my lengthy, detailed instructions. And thanks for everything. Oh, one more thing. For the filing method, after you have trimmed your nail, before you heat it again, and you've let it cool, if you don't want to use nail clippers to get a really good match, and if you have some little pieces hanging over, then you can file your nail down. With this, you just want to be careful because you want to use a downward filing motion only. If I went back and forth, then I would be lifting my nail when I went up. So if you want to do that, then you would just downward file just like this. So just in a downward motion. And then what's going to happen is the wrap is going to basically just curl up and fall right off. With this, you seem to get more of kind of a jagged edge, which is why I recommended the nail clipper method. Oh, hey there, Kat. especially if you're going to use the sparkle wraps, I recommend using the nail clip method because it's multiple layers on the wrap. It's thicker, so you tend to get a more rough edge if you use the filing. But that is a method you can use, especially if you don't want to cut your nails and you just want to file them a little bit. So that is another application method.